quick reminder, we now have a Discord channel called The Hideout. Join for behind-the-scenes tidbits, get buying recommendations from yours truly, and, just hang out. Scan the QR code on the screen or use the invite link in the description to join. Alright, back to the video. So we meet again for the weekend. Welcome back. For today's review, I have been sent a sample by a brand that's been out of the limelight for a while, Rose Technics. So they're trying to put themselves back onto the map and making it big, with this release having a very grandiose, kind of ambitious name, the Star City 5 Pro. So, as always, Rose Technics does not have any editorial input to my review. I will criticize the product if there are any shortcomings, and all thoughts are my own. But with that, let's see if this Star City 5 Pro shines as bright as its name suggests. So the box for this IEM is a bit bigger than usual, and I always appreciate it. It makes you feel like they care for the product, and it kind of makes you feel important for having purchased it. Slide out the sleeve, open the magnetic flap, and you'll see the IEMs placed in some very dense high quality foam with a cylindrical case to the side. Said case is covered in a sort of nice pleather with this Lightyear logo on top, and it's kind of similar in size to the Shure cylindrical case from my SOA review. Check it out if you haven't. In the bottom of the box, you're gonna get a kind of little user manual, 4 sizes of wide bore ear tips in a sort of holder. And of course, in the case, there's also 3 pairs of narrow bore ear tips. And as a very nice, very rarely seen bonus, you're getting a dongle included as well. It's using a Conexant 31993 chip. It powers the IEMs well enough. Very useful for those just starting out and needing a source to just plug into their phones for like quick usage. So the cable being used, it has a sort of fabric lining, which is not really my favorite, but you do get the 2 nice, very little matte black kind of 2-pin plugs, and this jack, which has the Lightyear word written on it. And it's also got a pretty sufficient chin slider, always a nice addition. And it just fits the aesthetics of Star City 5 Pro very nicely. Speaking of which, the IEMs themselves. So the front circular plate is made of a sort of shiny metal, and you've got the pill-shaped vent. It's making for, I'd say, a very steampunk look, whilst the rest of the body is being made of this black, shiny, glossy resin. On the front of the IEM, I'd say the shape looks a bit like a Sony IER Z1R, but the back, it's more shapely, kind of ergonomic, and it fits the ears surprisingly well, despite its unique look. Now, regarding the power requirements, the Star City 5 Pro can be driven out of pretty much anything, and I guess that this is pretty rare, but I find that this IEM pairs better with a sort of neutral or bright leaning source, whilst with other IEMs I would tend to recommend a warmer output. So I'll be driving the Star City 5 Pro with my LG V60. Ear tips wise, the stock ear tips, they're decent, but I'll be opting for the Tangzu TABP bass ear tips. So they don't really increase the bass in this case, but what they do is that they are quite comfortable for me to wear. If you want to get some extra treble clarity out of this sound even, the Core Air AL alloy ear tips are also worth a shot, although it's a bit more song dependent. Sometimes it's just enough of a boost, sometimes it's a bit overboard, depends. But with all that out of the way, let's get to the sound of the Rose Technics Star City 5 Pro. What I'll say is that the Star City 5 Pro has a slightly bright sound signature with some very distinct tuning decisions that reflect an older style of tuning before, all the tuning targets became popular. So starting with the bass. Bass on Star City 5 Pro is serving as an additive element rather than the star of the show. It can come off as being somewhat bass light with certain tip combos, but if you achieve a good fit, good seal, the driver is able to output a conservative but enjoyable mid-bass character. I would say portrays good impact, even if it's not the most thumpiest, the most bumpiest thing out there. I do wish that there is more bass fidelity, as the bass texture here, it's a bit too soft, and at times it feels very one note. Although with heavier genres, the low end can be a bit too shy. For percussive instruments, they have that needed weight and presence. So you've got a fairly neutral lower mid-range performance on the Star City 5 Pro. It handles well the melodies and overall musical energy with, I guess, just a slight tinge of warmth. Upper mids are also tuned competently, with vocals being slightly behind the instrumental elements. I guess though, its presence in the mix is being kind of encroached by the lower treble boost I'll explain later. In some songs, the vocals will have a little bit of an extra sharpness to it, whilst in others they can feel just a little bit dull, making for sort of a genre-dependent mid-range. This introduces some, I'd say, tonal inconsistencies, and the separation abilities, it leaves me a little bit wanting. Now, the lower treble of the Star City 5 Pro, its most distinct feature, I'd say. There is a 7 kHz peak, which is not something you often see in modern IEMs, but it was something that was employed in a lot of older IEM tunings as a sort of clarity boost. It's a double-edged knife, so in songs with cymbals, hi-hats, that sound, there's a sense of extra detail and brilliance, that sort of, I'd say, zing that I don't often hear with the modern IEMs. But in other songs, I'd say that there's a bit of a patch of nothing in the mix that's kind of being boosted because of this strategic boosting. And it creates a somewhat splashy and scratchy artifacting. Treble extension is fairly rolled off, but having a bright source or tip rolling can restore some transparency in the air frequency. So it's a very distinct kind of treble that's being brought up here, which will depend a lot on what kind of music you're going to be listening to. So the soundstage width on the Star City 5 Pro is about average for an IEM, with staging height being present at a rudimentary level, but it's more clearly shown in the simpler mixes. The result is that the imaging is not a particularly noteworthy feature of this IEM. The separation abilities of the Star City 5 Pro are adequate, but it's not the most impressive either. There's good handling of the macro detailing, but micro details are being present, although it's just not as clearly separated in the mix. So Rose Technics, they went with a more, I'd say, cohesive showing rather than a technical sound, and it does affect this IEM's resolution, with busier songs showing a somewhat crowded performance. So how goes the Star City Pro compared to the Xuan Ji that I recently reviewed? Both are roughly within the same price level, with the Rose IEM going for a combination resin and metal shell with a vent in the front, whilst the Tangzu offering is all in on a metal shell, dynamic driver, with a very intricate open design. I'll have to give the design edge to the Xuan Ji, but the Star City 5 Pro, it competes well on the accessories front, with including that handy dongle, a great case, and good ear tip selection. Now for the sound, both have, I'd say, a moderate bass, but the Star City 5's low end is more percussive. It acts as a support to the other frequencies with a softer texture, while the Xuan Ji, it has a bit more energy, slightly faster decay. Mid-range on both of the IEMs, we have a similar, I'd say, essence, with the biggest contrast being shown in the vocal performance. So the Star City Pro is more restrained for female vocals, but it's expressive for the male singers, whilst the Tangzu, it portrays female overtones more clearly. The treble on both, they have a boost, but we see different philosophies. So Rose Technics, they do a 7 kHz boost, Tangzu, it's an 8 kHz boost. The Rose IEM, it has a more twangy, shiny feeling cymbals, and it's leaving everything else besides those cymbals untouched. Whilst the Tangzu, it's sharpening the overall tonality. They both have about equivalent separation, but I feel like the Tangzu, it brings micro details up to the surface a bit more. Another IEM within that same price bracket is going to be the Sivga Q, I think that's how it's called, switching to a wood faceplate, which offers a nice contrast to the more industrial kind of design of the Rose Technics IEM. And while I prefer the cable on the Q, the Star City 5 Pro, it offers the better case. It's got that extra dongle, which is always gonna take the win in the value department for me. Sound-wise, the Rose IEM is more brighter leaning with a leaner kind of bass and lower mid-range profile, whilst the Q, it has a warmer interpretation in these regions, and it's focusing a bit more on well-extended treble than the specialized 7 kHz peak on the Rose. Technicalities are, I'd say, roughly similar again, though the stage width, the Q, is a bit wider. It's giving some more space for the instruments to play and be kind of just placed around your head. If I'm listening to something like Bruno Mars with a very kind of funky vocal performance and a very jumpy melody, I'll reach for the Star City 5 Pro. If it's a more chilled kind of romantic song with female vocals, I think the Q does well to highlight those features more. With tuning targets becoming popular in the audio community, many IEMs have tried to cater to this demographic with a consistent FR and to good effect. But I think it's always nice to see some releases kind of branch off from the proverbial tree to arrive at a more experimental, less explored kind of sound. The Star City 5 Pro, a mouthful of a name, right? It's differentiating itself with a leaner, a bright sounding tone that plays well with cymbals and hi-hats and accentuating male vocal performances. It's not the most resolving, nor is it the most technically competent set, but is made up for that with a quality build, nice unboxing experience, and just value-packed accessories like the included dongle and a solid case. But yeah, that'll be it for this review. Remember to like, subscribe, go into my Discord, take a look at the new graph database, and if you can, give me a monthly sub in Patreon. It'll really help the channel out. Thank you.